Okay, good evening and welcome to the March 18th Board of Estimate and Tax uh, budget review and discussion of open items. Madam Clerk, may I get you to call a roll, please?
Mr. Rilling,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Gilleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis,
Here.
Miss Yang.
Here.
7, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, before we begin looking at open items and deliberating on things, any comments that you'd like to make to start this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Abrams. As I finish my comments, I'll ask Tom to bring us up to date on where we are relative to the cap. And obviously, he'll show us the open items. I do want to thank the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I know this is always a grueling process, but especially this year when we've had to make some very, very difficult decisions. I know that there's open items that some of the department heads asked for us to reconsider. I think we need to reconsider them very carefully if we're going to approve any of those items, because again, we're probably very, very close to the cap. And again, we know that the impact this is going to have on the residential properties of the city of Norwalk, and we're very, very concerned about that. So again, thank you to the department heads for all that they've done for trying to come in with the 3.5% that we asked them to. And some of them did, and some of them had a little challenge with that. But I think we're going to get through this. And Wednesday night, I look forward to hearing from the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, Tom, do you want to bring up the open items and,
Sure.
to the mayor's point, show us where we are against the cap at this point?
All right, let me know when you can see that and how the visibility is.
I can see it just fine. Is everybody else comfortable with what we're looking at?
Yeah, it looks good on my side.
Okay. So we had about 15 open items from all of our deliberations, most of them in the down direction or decrease. We had 2 items that were actually increases that we'll also be discussing tonight. And then a number of, I put the NAs over here, not so much an open discussion on cutting or adding that particular line item, but just looking for a little bit more clarity and descriptions and information on those items. And I have most of those at the ready.
Okay. So I think if we just go down the list might be the best way to do this. I think we agreed on the business expense from the mayor's office. We were going to take that down by $3,000.
Yeah.
It's not a huge contribution, but it was something. Any additional comments, concerns related to that? Okay, moving in the other direction though, there was a discussion and I guess conversation around, should we take up the seminar and conference fees for accounting and treasury, given the need for learning and development, given the need for continued skill building. Thoughts, comments on this item? Anybody feel differently in the cold light of day versus where we were?
So Tom, if you could maybe take us through that just a little bit and see what training that you would be looking to have, or I know that we will be introducing someone coming up in the next couple of days that might be necessary to have some training, but I'm not sure. The seminar and conference fees are usually pretty good because it's always good to do some networking. So I don't have a problem if we bring that up somewhat.
Okay, yeah, on my side, the management budgets, my primary ask was on the GFOA annual conference. And they also have started charging for some of their webinars, just a nominal amount, maybe $35 to to $50. This one happens to be in Chitsume's world. So that team is also members of the GFOA, but in addition to that, they have some accounting opportunities over on their side as well. Some items that our auditors offer, that CLA, Clifton Larson Allen. So I think the thought there was a few more things that are related to the hardcore accounting aspect of their day-to-day functions rather than the management and budget side that we focus on. So no magic to the 10,000, only that it was what was put in and approved last year. So I don't have a list of actual conferences, but that was what they had last year.
Do you think you could go back to the 7,500 that we had in 23 and
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Well, here's another thought. And again, we're just trying to do everything we can, right? Should we take it all out and fund it from contingency based on the specific conferences and the attendees that they want to go? I know that means, Tom, coming back multiple times throughout the year from Chitsume's team, but it's an option to sit there and really be specific about individual attendees, individual conferences, and looking at the return on investment from attending. Thoughts?
Hey, Ed,
Yes, Artie.
I mean, I'm in favor of training. I think it's very important, especially to keeping up to date on a lot of practices. What if we just split it in half, and if they need more, we can give them more? Just go to 5,000.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I tend to agree with that.
Anybody have a concern with that?
not I?
All right, so Tom, let's do that. We'll increase it by 5. And then if there's need for specific conferences, it can come back through contingency.
Right. Okay. The next item is not applicable, at least on the dollar amount front. This is cybersecurity. I think we all are fully aware of the headlines out there. Joyce is out at present, and I wasn't able to catch her before I was out last week. But I do recall that she had a list of exactly the items that she went in for. I think we also have heard that there are several, if not numerous, council members who agree with the Evergreen efficiency study in terms of doing everything you possibly can for cybersecurity. And you know, we do well. The proof is in the pudding. We do a very good job. We haven't had an incident as of yet. I know I can vouch for the fact that we get emails, we get tested all the time, and if you click on it, then you get a warning, and your boss gets a warning, and they seem to be helping. So we left that at 541 too. And the request, I believe, from the BET was just to try to gather more information on what made up that number and how badly did we need it. But I think the argument, especially from Joyce and probably from some of the council members, would be to as is.
Ed, Tom, could you give us some detail as to what that 541 represents?
I unfortunately no. I was out a couple days last week after our last meeting. I wasn't able to connect with Joyce, and now Joyce is up today and tomorrow. So I wasn't able to chase that down today.
She didn't have it in her budget presentation?
She may have. I can take a look in the book. It might be even the book, the budget book, but I can take a look at that real quick.
If you can check that, Tom, and also maybe, I know she's out today and tomorrow, but Wednesday morning, get us more detail before Wednesday evening.
Okay.
Other comments on this line item?
My recollection was that she was okay with this number, and so the plus side is adding to it for greater cybersecurity, and the reduction. I don't think people were really looking to reduce this item.
No, we were not looking for reduction. We were just looking for clarity of the line items, making sure that it was We were confident in that number, so I don't think there's a dollar figure change, but I think we're still owed that clarity and come back hopefully Wednesday. Fair?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, these next three items are the security systems for the library. I believe the question there was what goes in each one and why were they up? So I got a little more definition on these. This first line here, the 165 and the library admin programs, that is all the Orion personnel. Those are the guards in the building on site, both at the main library and at Sono. These other two are the actual systems. Think of the equipment rather than the people. So those are fire sprinklers, security monitors, video monitors, the servicing of them, the monthly fees, so on and so forth. So all of those went up, well, especially this one, the 165, due to that living wage increase that you recall me mentioning, and that was a pretty decent amount. And then these two, they got new upgraded systems, which cost a little bit more. And then the monthly fees went up as well.
Yeah, I guess my personal concern on the other two is I keep looking at the actuals to date for FY24, and they're so far below these numbers
Yeah, I agree with you, Ed.
that they just don't necessarily make sense to me.
Okay. Do we want to take them down a little bit?
What are
I
the
would say
actuals
yes.
right now? How much lower than these numbers are the actuals?
So,
And which one?
Yeah, and it's column S that's highlighted right now. That's 2024 actuals, and those are through February 29th, the end of February.
So is it the kind of thing where some places the bills don't come in until, like in some departments, the bills don't come in until, June or something like that. So that's when the money's spent. Is that the kind of thing that's going on here possibly?
I don't think so. They're usually the people who bill monthly want their money monthly. So I doubt that's it. We may have made some payments in early March, shortly after I pulled the actuals down.
Do we have
I also-
23s?
Yeah,
FY
if you look in
23?
column P,
Yeah, right there. That's total about $6,000 between the two.
Oh, I'm trying to look it on my sheet. I may not have printed everything out.
Given that it's a third-party supplier, the cost will be the cost. And if it's less than 165, then it'll come back to the fund balance. I think a question would be is with these large increases, can the purchasing department go out and negotiate a better contract citywide? Because I think this was pretty high numbers across the board, and one can understand the wage increase. But I think if we're spending that level of money, maybe there's savings to be had in a better buying program.
yeah, and I think we're talking about two separate groupings of line items. I think you're on the Orion costs, row 531, and what we're looking at are here, and the rest of us are talking about the systems maintenance costs, the two items below that. I don't disagree with you on having the city look at renegotiating Orion, but that cost was pretty clear in terms of living wage increases as to how they got to it, et cetera. I don't think there's flexibility there. The two smaller numbers, while not as material, are just significantly higher than any past history we have on actuals. I would submit that, each of those numbers should basically be cut in half, from 10,000 to 5, and from 57 to 2,500 and let them come back if there's an issue there, just based on historical run rates.
I agree, Ed.
Mhm.
Anyone
don't
disagree
disagree.
with that?
No, I
that's
don't.
I think that's reasonable.
So leave the 165 as is.
I think so, but I would like to note Ann's comment. I think it is a fair one to say, with all of these third-party contracts, has procurement really looked at them, and have we negotiated on behalf of the city as best possible?
If I can add something there also, Ed, Tom, refresh my memory. Did the library go out for a bid for a separate security company as opposed to Guardian? I believe I heard that.
No, well, Guardian uses Orion for security, so they're sort of tied together. But you are correct in part of that, in that Sherelle was hopeful to look for other vendors other than Orion, and I don't believe that ever ended up actually coming to fruition. I think there are economies. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying we use at City Hall as well, and it seems as if, as others have mentioned, here we are in fiscal FY24 actuals. We're at 59,000, and there's asking 3 times as much as that, and we've only got April, May, and June left.
Well, the actuals probably only have 1 month at the new rate. I would expect that the rest of the year is going to have that new living wage rate with the the new contract actually kicks into place.
But
right.
it go up that much?
It's not going to get us to $135,000 budget. So
Well, they're asking 165.
yeah, for next year. But so this year we have 136.
Yeah,
And we're at 59. So maybe we get to 100, 110.
yeah.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. But next year will be a full 12 months. Well, actually, probably another 8 or 9 months at the new living wage rate. And recall that every March we do a new document, and if it goes up, the living wage will go up along with the contract.
Mhm. So what would you recommend there?
In terms of the 165,
Yes,
yeah, I would say we could probably bring that down to 145.
I think that's a good compromise. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
I think that's right.
I think that's
Agree.
very fair. That's still 30% over projected actuals.
I agree.
Anyone have issue with that? Anyone want to lean into it further? Okay, so they're taking that to 145. We'll take the security system down to 5, and we'll take the Sonos security system down to what, 26? Hold it flat to FY23.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, and then these next 4 here, this is the TMP traffic signals that recall was transferred from Public Works over to TMP. TMP already had some line items with budget in there, but the transfer from DPW bumped it up to these numbers right here. I don't know that we actually talked about cutting anything here, but this was sort of my estimate of what they might be able to take down. So just a starting point for discussion.
Why is the column that finance has recommended no hires higher than the requested line?
So that includes the transfer from DPW. The requested does not.
Oh, okay.
So in DPW, we would find some of those columns zeroed out, or.
Right, yeah, we did,
Okay.
we would and we did.
Okay,
I believe, Tom, your starting point is correct and a good place to go with this. You know, I think you can probably lean into training and education. You know, and take another 1,000 out of that pretty easily, just based on where we are with that.
Make that
I-
10,680.
I think so.
Why can't we keep it flat since we're taking other training and education down?
I'm suggesting taking it down further from this year, and they were at 11.2 this year. This would be to 10.6.
Okay, good.
Okay.
If we can also
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
we can go back to the other repair maintenance. Given that this is other section, and so it's a bit of a catch-all, I like Tom's number of the 10,000. And if they need more, they can come back and transfer. This is a department with a fairly robust budget.
So, and I'm
Yep.
proposing a $10,000 reduction from the 72. So my 10,000 means we're taking that 72 to 62.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think we're all in agreement on that. Any of the other numbers for TMP we want to challenge?
Well, I think we're into the traffic signal supplies at the 40,000.
Exactly. I think Tom's estimate of taking that down by 40 makes sense. Do we want to lean harder into that, or are we comfortable with that?
I think taking that down to to 40 is I think fair.
Okay. Anybody have a different point of view?
I'm okay.
All right. So
Okay,
we're good.
I think so.
Okay. So the next item, again, wasn't really a dollar discussion. It was more a question surrounding the actuals, the increase in the actuals, and then especially for the fiscal 24. So there are two components that go into this. This is the sewer fee payments that we make for all the city buildings. So it's City Hall, it's Public Works, et cetera, et cetera. It is also the amount that we pay for shared services to the WPCA. So that totals about a little over 500,000. The balance of it is the property taxes for the new property at One Meadow Street Extension, which is where Hatch and Bailey was and where the Sono Middle School or the Sono School will be. I'm not entirely sure it belongs there. They made that payment in July. I've got some people looking into it and a call into Alan Lowe for further clarification, but it might be, it was $165,000 for the property taxes. So when we took it over from Hatch and Bailey, therefore we're obligated to pay that, not Hatch and Bailey. So I would expect that 525 for next year would be fine in the absence of that property tax payment going forward.
So conceivably, it would be 685 or 690.
What would the 2025 number?
Mhm.
No,
Would-
no, what I'm at this point, early in the investigation, I don't believe that the property tax belongs in this line item. I think it might somehow be related to either the school construction costs or the Board of Ed, or maybe the capital that they have for the purchase of the property. And at whatever point we discover where it should go, it's easy enough to journal over to that new account, and it's no longer here. If it does indeed end up belonging here, then we're gonna have, well, we're gonna be over in that line item, but we'll
Right.
address.
I'm a little confused about the property tax. Are we paying, do we have to pay property tax to ourselves for property who's the
Yeah.
property tax being paid to?
That's essentially what it is, which is why they're using this account transfers to other funds. So,
So it
Like-
just right back to us. So
yeah, you're right, Ed.
it's an expense and a revenue at the same time.
Yeah, so one of the questions is, what do we do for the rest of the schools in the city? Shouldn't we treat this one like that? So. But that remains an open item, but in the finance world, not for you guys.
Let's talk to Paul Gorman about that as well.
Okay. We good there?
I believe so. Any other comment? Okay,
All right, next one is the salt for the winter storms and the roads. This has already been trimmed quite a bit from 400 down to 250. Our actuals are 315 so far this year. We heard Vanessa in our department meeting talking about how low the stock is in the storage shed at this point. So I'm hesitant to go too deeply on this. One of her strategies is to use rollover funds from other line items when we go through that process in September to hopefully try to replenish the salt budget. So that's why I tread a little bit lightly on this one, just a $25,000 reduction.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tom, because also she needs flexibility to buy the salt on the open market. Apparently there's different windows, and I'd like to have the freedom to buy at a discount if possible.
Right.
I think we buy the salt from the state, right? The state has purchases the salt, and then we buy from the state. Is that the way it works?
I'm not certain on that. She indicated
There
that
was
they actually buy it at auction, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And,
Well, I like the idea of taking rollover funds and transferring it into needs, that she needs salt. So,
Yeah, we are fortunate. Most of the time, we are fortunate at the end of the fiscal year having surplus balances in a few of the accounts that we can reconcile and move the money around. So I'm comfortable with that as well.
My only question is, do we want to lean harder into it? Do we want to take it down so it's 200,000, not 225 as a budget, and it needs more again? We can deal with it through contingency if there's not money there from a rollover perspective. It's nickels and dimes in terms of impact on the taxpayers.
Mm.
And it's a risk,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if that's
We've had
the one,
mild
Ed.
winters, but we could have a crappy winter.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the one, Ed. I think she might be able to save more money with the flexibility. Fine.
Okay. I raise it for discussion.
I
If
get it.
everybody's more comfortable with the 25, I'm comfortable there as well.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, sounds like we're good there.
all right, so leave the 25 as is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next one is Rec and Parks. This is a $40,000 requested increase. Just to refresh everyone's memory, this is for an individual full-time to work on their what's called ActiveNet program. That is the automated system for permits and registrations and collecting fees and such. One of Robert's main points was the first day that camp registrations were open, they brought in over $300,000 in registrations. So they consider that an extremely valuable resource. But our approach was to tell Robert, if he could find the money to fund it for the first half of fiscal 25, we would consider authorizing a hire full-time in January. We did that a few times in fiscal 24 with several different areas, and that ended up working out okay. So that's the ask at this point. Robert went back and did what he was asked and came up with 40 grand and asking us to bless the full-time hire in January for another 40.
If I could chime in here, I had a conversation today with Tom, the other Tom, my chief of staff. I have been struggling with this. You know, you pay for a software program and then have to hire somebody to run it rather than using and training staff that you already have. And I also didn't see how it was going to increase our revenue. And moreover, the people who would be signing up for various parks and fields would be entering a lot of the data themselves. So I was struggling with that, but I was talking to Tom Livingston today, and it appears that Robert has the money to fund this for the full time for this next fiscal year. So I thought that would be a fair thing to give us a chance to evaluate the program with money that he already has, and rather than having to fund it at $80,000, that we would be good by having him use the current funding that he already has available to him in his budget.
So, Mr. Mayor, just out of clarity, does that mean then that we do not need to give him an extra $40,000? We can
That's
zero that
correct.
out?
That's correct.
That's great.
I think that's wonderful.
So he's got 80,000 that he is comfortable finding.
According to him.
Okay, all right.
Well, I'm sure they're going to tighten the belt a little bit over the next couple of months to make sure that they'll have enough to roll over and carry over, so they get that money for next fiscal year. And also, he won't be able to even start hiring until July 1 anyway. So
Yeah, if I might, he's going to transfer some of the money he currently has in a budget for temporary help. So,
yeah, okay.
Okay, cool. So zero that one out, Tom.
Okay. The next one, now we're into the grants. Recall that Matt Pence was here on the transit district. And my notes say that he was willing to, I think somebody had asked to take it down to 610 or 600. And he countered with 625. So that's what the $35,000 reduction is reflective of.
That is in line with my notes. Any other comments there?
Yeah, I think this number 60, the objective should be seeing it go to zero, because a good portion of that is funding the Norwalk ADA program, which I think is important. But he's waiting for the state to fund that because Stanford already has that funding. The other part of that was to be paying their debt. The other large part of it was their interest carrying costs on working capital because of the time difference in their payables. So their payables, they don't get it for 60 days. And that again is a state issue. So I would hope that those items can be, and then he was at 610, and then the 50 he would use to pay down his debt. So I think that 660 ultimately should be zero. And I don't think that we should be, I mean, I think he was going to use the additional 50, like training and things like that. And so when we're cutting all this other training, and these should be expenses that the state's picking up, I don't see why it's 35 and not 50.
I'm sorry, Ed, were you going to make a comment? Your box lit up, that's all.
No, not me, no, sorry.
Sorry. Well, and on the first part of your comment, I agree, and I believe he said that he hopes, over the next couple of years, this turns to zero. Right? That was a stated part of his remarks, so I think we're all in agreement there. Other thoughts on taking this from 35 to 50 and keeping him at 610?
My concern is, so it seems as if they're kind of gridlocked because of the delay in the state's payment. If they don't have the funds to pay for what they have to do, then what happens?
This budget accounts for them being able to float their payables. The 50 is sort of the extra money that he had, which he might use to pay down debt, or he might use for training. The 660 accounts for the ADA program, which, given that Stanford has theirs, conceivably, we might be getting ours sometime this year. So we don't necessarily need a full year. And
That it?
and they are trying to fix the payables. So this accounts for them for us paying the interest expense on their line. So that would not be an issue.
But as far as the interest expense, it seems as if they're not at fault, it's the state's issue or the way they run things. If they don't have the funds to pay that interest expense, would that put them in a worse position and create a greater issue?
Well, what they wanted to do, because the state knows that the transit districts have this negative carry, so to speak, on the working capital expense, they've been pushing to get the state, instead of paying in 60 days, to pay maybe in 7 days, to reduce that payable line. If they reduce their time to pay from 60 days to 30 days, that's a savings of $75,000 or $100,000. So that's something that the transit district need to fight with the state about, or to get with the state on. And
I guess. Kendrick,
I just feel like the state's a much larger entity, and just because they're pushing doesn't guarantee that that'll solve the issue. So I feel more comfortable with the 35 number.
The only counter I'll offer you, Kendrick, and again, we can then put it to a vote and move on, is that when it was presented inside of a budget of 610, it was indicated to us that the interest carrying costs were within that $610,000 envelope. So that we're not putting them at additional risk of interest carrying costs beyond where they are today. Okay. That's just, those are my notes from that presentation. So I can agree with Ann that we take this down to 610, but other board members have a thought on that or a concern?
Yeah, I agree. It should be at 610. Listen, it's a tough decision. These are tough times. He said he wanted that extra money to try to help out morale and stuff. And listen, I understand that, but unfortunately, times are very tough this year, and this is not the year for that. Everyone's experiencing pain. So give them the interest expense coverage and let's move on.
Right. So 50K, Tom.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Probate.
Excuse me.
If I
God
could
bless
talk
you.
on the next three items quickly, because I go back to 23, and
Yep.
you see a pretty constant number all the way across the board on all of them. I find it hard to believe that every year they're going to need 30,985, 30,985, Thursday. It just seems like people sometimes get a little lazy and just plug in a number. Same thing with Harbor Commission, 2020, 2020, and 20. I guess we've kind of guaranteed them that. But when they keep going like fair housing, 11.5, 11.5, 11.5, it just boggles my mind that it's always the same each year rather than doing an actual and trying to figure out exactly what you do need. It just seems to be more comfortable just throwing in that number from the year before.
And
Mhm.
these numbers are grants rather than part of their inherent P&L to operate. And I think the probate courts, where they were going to put the money for the grants was office supplies. And given that they have a budget, they get funding from other places. I don't see why we need to be, I don't see why we need to be doing that. If it goes to zero, and they really don't have the money, then they can come back.
What did you find out from the probate court about what that money was for, and more specifically, how do they receive, or where do they receive their other revenues from?
But I think all of their fees are set by the state. They don't set anything, so it's really just contingent on what how much activity they have, how busy they are, and what the state allows them to charge.
Okay, so they get they get whatever comes in fees. The state doesn't provide any additional funding.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But is it the state that pays for the salaries for the judge and for the clerks? So that's part of the whole.
I think what it is that all that monies that they collect, I think it goes to the state and then the state pays, but it's based on what they collect.
Mhm.
Is my
Right.
understanding.
The judge's salary gets paid by the state. So really the state is picking up most of their overall expenses.
Well, it's
And
paid by the state only to the extent that that revenues are collected at the court. So in other words, the state receives money from, I think, from the probate court, and the probate court and that pool of money is then what the state uses to pay the judge and everything else. It's not a separate thing.
Mhm.
Like it's not part of like the other court system.
right. But the state picks up, the state's going to pay the judge.
From monies that the probate court collects.
So I have a little bit of a naive question because these are all grants. And let's say we zeroed out probate just for a moment, right? Is that still, Tom, could the probate court come forward and ask for additional expense through contingency? Because this is a grant. It's not as if it's, a line item for the library or things like that. So is it even possible if we don't give this money at the beginning of the year that they can come back for money out of contingency during the year?
We haven't done that yet, but I don't know that there's any statute or anything in the charter that says we can't. But I can look into that. So normally the way this works, we pay all, 5 of them now. They submit the request to us in July, and we pay it pretty quickly, just to give them funding to manage throughout the year. And we all heard Matt say, he needs this sort of as a bridge until the state funding comes in. So.
Mhm.
Do we know if Wilton contributes any money?
Say again?
Do we know if Wilton contributes any
Yes.
money?
Yeah, they do. We do a calculation based on, the percentage of square footage within City Hall and other things. And I want to say it's about $9,000 a year that they pay us.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask kind of the same question about Wilton. Do they give them a grant or they just pay us for rent?
I think they just pay us directly. but I'm not positive.
Can I suggest that we take this to 10 grand even and see if they can cover the difference within their overall budget?
You're talking probate, right, Ann?
Yes, I'm just talking about the probate. So we go from
Just making sure we're on the same line. Yeah.
from
Can I-
3413 to 10.
Can I suggest that we ask the probate judge or whoever speaks on behalf of the probate court to give us more detail on this money and why it's needed, or if it is needed, to cover, because the beginning of the fiscal year, they still have to buy supplies and everything else. And I don't know that there's any reserve money from the prior fiscal year that they collected that can then be used for the new fiscal year. And as you said, Tom, when they, we give them the money pretty quickly at the beginning of the fiscal year. So it could be that that's because they rely on that until fees are collected and monies are transferred to the state, and the state then transfers the money back. Who knows? I'm just not sure, but it seems to me that I wouldn't mind if Doug Stern or whoever, whoever puts these things together, I guess it was Doug Stern's signature on the document, if they could provide a little bit more detail about this.
Would you like that at the next BET meeting, which is April 1st? I can ask them to come and do a quick
Well,
presentation.
don't we need to decide a number prior to that, Tom?
Yeah, we do, but I don't know that I
Oh.
can get them in front of it. Well, I don't think we can do that at the public hearing, and that's pretty much our last opportunity.
My recollection on the grant was that it was purely for office supplies.
My personal notes are not good on that one, so I apologize.
Yeah, they don't present. They just submit their paperwork, and we send the invites, and they say that they don't attend.
But Tom, in the stuff that you sent out in the books, it sort of outlines where people where they're going to spend the grant money, and I think there's said off. And it sounds like a placeholder.
Yeah, I mean, I can look into it. Yeah, I have it somewhere here in my file, but I can look into that.
If I have it here, Tom.
Yeah, it's
No. I can't, all that's in it is the single line item in the budget book, Tom.
Wait, it's in Tom's email from
yeah,
3.
I've got it. Yeah, it's postage, supplies, scanners, umbrella insurance, office furniture, fees for storage and film records. Yeah, it's all supply items.
And if it was really important, I would think someone would show up. And if we just keep on giving them 30,000 every year, I mean,
Now they're just gonna continue to submit and not show up.
like, yeah, they give us these grants. If there was money if we had extra money, it should be going into something for the city like cybersecurity or things like that. So
So
I said-
what do we think? Do we want to take it down to 15? Do we want to take it down to 20? I don't think we can leave it at nothing, given some of the fact that it's pay ahead, but
So we go
where
in
do we
half.
want to,
15 is fine with me. I think it's
15's fine then. All right, so we're gonna take 15 out of that number, Tom.
Okay.
Harbor Commission. Alan provided a 5-page response. $20,000.
see
He
that.
spent more. I think he spent
Yes.
more time on resources responding than the
I-
total grant.
I agree with that, Ed. Hmm.
But in response, it sounds as if he expects his revenue from transit moorings to go up by 5,000. So conceivably, we could take the 20 to 15.
Yeah, at the end of the day, after, yes, and I agree with that. And I
he-
think Tom, and next year, yes, we, or bring these grant people in, and yeah, we can't have them just do what they've been
Yeah, well, I
doing.
don't want to. Yes, we just
Yeah.
have to limit the time they speak because Alan did show up, and was
No,
quite
he did, and I
eloquent.
read his thing today, and yes, it was quite extensive. But at the end of the day, it sounded like yes, the transit moorings were going to get a little more money and a lot of stuff going on there, but maybe a small
So-
reduction there. I mean, it's
We'll
fine.
take 5,000 out of that. Anybody have
Yeah.
an issue with that?
No,
Okay. Then fair housing.
This line item has been on the city that comes from the consent decree, which was, and Mayor Reardon, you may recall whether it was 1978 or 1985, but it's decades old. I don't think there are any of our neighboring cities have fair housing officers. And Margaret Sweep's done a terrific job, but I just don't know and don't think that it's necessary anymore for us to continue. We would probably need to just make sure that after 40 years that we can eliminate this position because we've gone into compliance with the other issues that we may have had. So if Margaret is retiring in January, I suggest, like we've done with other positions, we just fund it for the time and we don't fund it for the subsequent as if there's going to be a direct replacement.
Well, I can answer that partially. With a consent decree, we have no alternative but to have a fair housing officer and a fair housing commission. So anything that would change that would have to go through the federal court because this was an agreement that the city reached. And, I agree, we're doing better. I still think that the fair housing officer does play an important role because they do get quite a few inquiries. It's not that nothing happens. People are going there because of the situations regarding housing and discrimination and other kinds of things. So I'd be a little bit reluctant to I'd be reluctant to change it, but we couldn't change it anyway unless we got an approval from the federal court.
But can't we take that role and put it into not a full-time, to put it into another, like there, I know that there's we have other agencies for housing that we could.
Any significant change to what currently exists without going through the federal court would result in a lawsuit from the NAACP, who's a party to this. And we've had these discussions and they've made it very clear that there would be a lawsuit if we deviated from what we currently have. It's one thing to say, cut it in half. But if we've been going with a fair housing officer full-time all these years, to cut it in half would be an arbitrary change, a unilateral change based on what we decide. Again, I'd be very reluctant to do that without negotiating or without going through the federal court.
But I suggest the following. So the half is for Margaret till she hires. But if we hire another person, it doesn't have to be someone that costs us $177,000 per year. It could be someone who costs us $100,000. So maybe we can put $50,000 in the for the new hire, such that this number would go down maybe $40,000.
You know,
Um,
the Fair Housing Commission would be responsible for replacing Margaret. They would be interviewing candidates. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Margaret is an attorney. And she is, you're not going to find somebody to come in there for a lot less than what Margaret's making right now. I agree. You could probably bring her into, or bring him or her into the mid-range of what Margaret's making, and then that person would get bumps in salary every year, like the rest of the staff does.
And that person is not a city employee, right? The person is not part of the
No,
doesn't get the usual pay increases that city employees get, things like that, or the benefits, right? Is that the way it works?
yeah.
So there's that, and I think that I think you're right, Mr. Mayor. I think that if we wanted to change what we were doing, we'd have to go to the federal court and ask the federal court permission to either to do whatever, to whatever relief we're asking for. And I think it's not so much that we're doing a better because it's almost like saying we don't need the Voting Rights Act anymore because people aren't cheating. Once we do away with it, people start cheating. So it's or start making it difficult for people to vote. So which is what's happening now. So
Yeah.
I think it's really it's because we have the fair housing officer in office that we are doing a lot better than might be doing otherwise with respect to housing in Norwalk.
I would
for
agree,
sure.
and I'd also suggest that the risk reward ratio here is not worth it, quite honestly. Troy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I strongly agree with Ed's legal opinion there and the mayor's comments about I didn't realize about the consent decree, but yes, I agree that should be what it is, and it's something that the city should be using, and I would strongly advise us keeping it the way it is.
I would
agree as well.
Go ahead, and
I would like to just add one thing. At the time of this consent decree, there probably did not exist the CHRO, which is a state department for fair housing. And all housing has to come underneath that. Anyone can make a complaint to CHRO. So given that CHRO still, it now exists, but probably didn't when this consent decree came about, there is argument that there is some element of coverage. And again, I don't think any other city in our proximity has this. But
all right, understood, guys. But look,
I just want to say that
we
the
are.
CHRO deals with employment discrimination, as I understand it. I think.
No, it's housing. It's
all right. So look, I'm going to put it to a vote of the board.
no, you don't.
All those.
I'm not going to oppose this.
I'm sorry, Ann?
I said you don't need to. I'm not going to oppose this.
Okay, then we're going to leave those items as is. All right, so Tom, where did we net out then with the additional cuts?
I've got us at about 245.
Okay.
Is there
And
the background noise somewhere?
yeah,
I think that's from my house. My wife is on the DTC meeting, so let me mute myself and ask her to turn it down a little bit.
Actually, you know what? I think I might need to go to the DTC meeting since we're at the end of this. Is that right?
Yeah, the only thing, Ed,
Uh,
before we leave,
Mr. Chairman, before we end, and I just want to know, add this. Listen, as the mayor started the meeting, and every meeting we said, these are tough times, tough decisions have to be made. I was a little concerned. I talked to Tom a number of times. The difference between what happened was with the commercial to the residential, the bottom line is about $24 million shifted to the burden of the residential side. And yes, everybody made tough decisions. The departments all made decisions, but what we've done tonight is great. But obviously it's, as Tom said in a memo earlier, it's not going to make a big difference in what our taxpayers are going to be shocked to pay. My feeling is I'd like to open up the discussion, or I don't know how you want to handle this, but I would like to see, in addition to what we've talked about, maybe the city and the board taking a 5% cut across the boards. Each area has to figure out where those cuts come from. And guess what? That number comes to about $24 million to make up the difference. It's be painful. Everybody in the city is dealing with this pain. I can't imagine having a 30% increase in my taxes. I mean, it's crazy, and that's the new tax. That's not going down. It's not a 1 year thing. So, in addition to what we've talked about here, I'm recommending that we have a 5% cut across the board on the city side and the education side to get us to the number, to bring us back to a number that Norwalk residents could live with. I mean, because I think it's unacceptable. This is my 5th year on this, and I've never seen anything. Obviously things have happened that we had no control over, but I think we have to make some very difficult decisions here. So I just put that out there.
I think the purpose of this exercise was to sort of nuance our way through the cuts that that we felt we could make. I think a 4 or 5% across the board is like taking out the sort of the axe, once again, versus the scalpel, which is I think what this meeting was about. I think there may be other ways to skin that cat. I'm not sure, if there's something on the revenue side or something else, but I think that to do that,
I mean, we haven't seen anything. Unfortunately, I was hoping there's some magical thing would happen, but what we've done over the last 3 weeks, it's a drop in the bucket, unfortunately.
unfortunately, that's the truth. But unless we are prepared to take draconian measures that really significantly impact city services, there's not much other choice, right? We know that at a minimum, the Board of Education needs to be funded at flat last year, given state
Right.
mandate. And
No, they won't be reduced. They won't be reduced.
No, I understand you didn't say that, Troy. I'm just suggesting that with that, to make any meaningful impact, you're taking a significant
Ed, you and I,
across city
Ed,
services.
you and I have been in the corporate world. You know how it works, okay?
I do, right?
5% is being
corporate-
generous, and it's a number you come up, your department has to come up with, okay? So I mean, this is not. It's kind of surprised me that I didn't see this at the beginning with the presentations that we had, and I was hoping something was going to happen. So I want to just work us way through. But yes, it's tough times. 36% is unbelievable, as you know.
I don't disagree. I mean, the reevaluation is going to shock everyone, and it is going to set a new baseline that is unfortunately exceptionally high. I'll turn to the mayor and Tom and say, gentlemen, again, we could take a corporate point of view on this, right? And the impact is earnings per share and shareholders. The impact here is services to the citizens of Norwalk. So, thoughts and reactions?
Can I comment?
Artie first, please.
And could go.
I applaud Troy in his commentary because yes, when people are budgeting and in corporate budgets, if the CEO comes and says, give me 5%, people show up with 5%. that said, I think a 3 or 4% increase in the budget relative to the level of inflation we've been experiencing is not unreasonable. The issue is the disparity between commercial and residential. And I know that Ed Abrams has told me that this is not on the table, but the BET does set mill rates. Is we can create a separate commercial and a residential, and we can change the mill rates such that the commercial is not being flat to down and the residential is 10 to 50% up, but we can change that such that it's more gradual. It could be something in between. And that is not a hard calculation. We have different mill rates for different districts. We have changed mill rates for personal property, for motor vehicles. It is a very elegant solution to a big problem, because if my taxes go up 20, and people don't count, if my taxes go up 30%, maybe I have to move. Now, that's a lot of money that I'm going to have to find somewhere in my budget. And
I'm just wondering if that's even legal. I mean, you have to
That's
treat
the whole point. We've not heard from Corporation Counsel
Yeah.
on that.
Right.
We don't know if that needs to go to a public referendum on any of that. And it's an extremely interesting idea. It's not something that that is A, in our purview, and B, can be implemented in the time frame we're dealing with.
We have not been blind to this possibility. We have asked Corporation Counsel. Right now, there's only one city in the state of Connecticut that does that, and it's Hartford. The other issue that we have to look at, if you look at office buildings, I don't want to mention any ones in particular. There's two very large office buildings in Norwalk that are pretty much empty. I just saw an article that the Fed is concerned about some of the lending institutions that are heavily invested in commercial because they're losing money and they may not be able to pay their loans. I agree. This is a horrible, horrible time. We have increased mill rates where we thought we could. Not sure that it would work in commercial, and we're taking a look at it, but we're waiting for an opinion from Corp Counsel to see what their thoughts are and how it comes back from the state. Can we do it? If we can, how can we do it? And if we can, do we want to do it? So it's not something you take lightly where you just say, okay, let's do it. We want to see the impact. We know the impact right now, but we have to make sure that we make these decisions and make them with good factual information so that we can make an informed decision.
I'm not suggesting that this is going to be easy or feasible. It may not be feasible, but it is worth running to the ground. And
I encourage you as a citizen of Norwalk, as you have, and to continue to push this and continue to work with the different areas to drive it. It's not something that is addressable at the moment by this board, nor is it within our purview at this point in time. It is a brilliant idea and it deserves a champion. And as a citizen, I appreciate you championing it.
Ed?
But it's not something we're going to resolve now.
No, we're not going to resolve it because there's a lot of work that needs to be investigated. But Ed, as the VET, the most important thing that we do at the end of April is set the mill rates. So us figuring
I understand that. And that has to be done within the purview of how the districts and the different areas are set.
But it's
there
worth
is not a separate. And I am not arguing that it's not worth exploring. It should be explored. It is not going to be resolved in time to set a budget for this year. It's not. You can disagree with me, but it's not.
Ed, I appreciate those comments once again.
But I think
we
a
can.
point of order. I think Artie was actually supposed to be first. and
sorry.
he graciously stepped back.
I
Thank you.
apologize.
Just a quick question. When we set the mill rate, we're setting the mill rate to cover the budget. Is that correct? So
Yes.
even though everybody's reval went up, doesn't necessarily mean that their taxes are going up that high. If we're just going up to cover the budget. Am I correct?
Well, that's the whole point, Artie.
believe
The
Tom,
problem
yeah.
is that's the normal situation, but because
Yeah.
of this shift from the commercial being responsible less now than the residential,
Okay,
the residential has taken more of a burden from 66% to 71%. That throws everything out of whack.
correct.
And that's what threw the numbers up this year. And this is the new baseline. These are the new baselines. You look at District 1, it's right here. District 1 is 33. Tom, what is District 1 going to be? Tax District 1.
They're all 20 plus, roughly.
Yeah, I mean, my position is, I understand what Ann's saying. I agree with that too, but that's going to take time. I agree with that also. But I'm saying, I'm recommending, and I don't want it, I'm not going to be happy unless we get a 5% reduction on the budget at 440, and that's $23 million. And that means people have to decide in this city what programs or what services they are going to have to do without to share the burden with the rest of the city. I mean, I don't know how people are gonna, this is not this is not
Appreciate your
easy.
point,
when
Troy.
you're-
It's noted. And before we pivot back to anything else,
Thank you.
on Troy's proposal, reactions and thoughts.
It is within the power of this board to cut the budget by 5% across the board, or 5%, and say, if that's what you want to do, I caution that, because we will be possibly laying off police officers, firefighters, teachers. And again, no action comes without a reaction. So you have to have those kinds of discussions have to take place with total open minds, but understanding what the consequences are going to be if you take that route.
Well, I think that's what the hearing will help on this
Mhm.
week. Hopefully people will talk about their situations, everyone's situation.
I think everybody right on this board is in the same situation. We understand it. It's painful.
Listen, I listened to you guys on the Common Council. Some of your Common Council members said they might not be able to live here because of this
And also other
situation.
Common Council members wanted to increase the budget.
Right.
So I don't know if you listened to those discussions.
And,
I heard that too.
Tom, do we know what the average percent increase is going to be per taxing district?
Let's see.
With this 200, let's say, with the budget without the 250 reduction that we.
And we went and found some extra money that is going to help out, but it's not going to help out to the tune of $24 million.
So the average tax in the 6th taxing district will go up 35%. The lowest, the lowest 4th district, which is 7%. But it's the first district is 8.3, second is 11.9, third district is 29.8, fourth is 6.8, fifth is 28, and the 6th is 34.7.
Wow.
They're huge numbers.
And what about these additional revenues? Is that a thing?
There's
We were
revenue
looking.
same as last year, pretty much.
All right, so the latest I have that includes the additional revenues that we sought out and a revised number from Gil Kernan, who is the 6th district treasurer. The median tax bill and I'm going to start with the 1st district, 26%, second is 32, third is 21, fourth is 12, fifth is 6, sixth is 14%. So the average tax bill, or I'm sorry, the median tax bill in the sixth district last year was 18.2, and that is going up to 20,800. So that's 14%. And that's with taking personal property up to 27 across the board, and then bringing the motor vehicles to 32.46, which is the state maximum.
So look, I don't know that we're gonna come to any conclusions here tonight. I would ask us to do the following. Consider Troy's comments. Listen with a very open mind during the public hearing on Wednesday. And then following that, be prepared first in executive session and then in open session to decide what we want to do in terms of an overall number. That's a fair set of asks.
It is, and I can also say, I know there's been discussion about the number of rental units and apartments being built. They count on the commercial side. If it wasn't for them, we'd really be in a fix. But also remember, if we increase the mill rate for the commercial side, it affects those apartments, and those apartments, the rents go up significantly as well. So it's all these things need to be considered as we're talking about how we want to proceed. I mean, I'd love to be able to say, yes, let's cut it 5% across the board. Let's get these numbers down. Is it doable? That I don't know. I don't know what the impact is going to be until we have that discussion.
So two other things, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So don't forget that we are locked into these contracts with all of our labor unions that are 2.35% plus the steps. So it's an average of 3 to 3.25. So we can't touch those, which would mean the real impact or the real percentage to everything that has a variable component to it would probably be 7 or 8%. The other thing I'll add on the apartments that Paul Gorman always reminds me of, we bring in 500 new residents that are living in these apartments. That's also 400 to 500 motor vehicles that get added to our tax roll as well. So that helps as well.
And we just had a discussion today about the possibility of putting out an RFP because we're finding a lot of people that are moving in from out of state and who are not registering their vehicles in Connecticut. And by law, they have to within, I believe it's 60 days. So we're looking at the model that we've looked at before, but now I think is the time to really get aggressive at it and see what they can provide for us. And it doesn't cost us anything. They take a percentage of their winnings, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Is the state still looking to get rid of the personal car tax?
They were thinking, but yes, they were. That was in discussion at the state level.
So
And that-
Artie, there's
It's impressive. Go
And
ahead.
that's $34 million if they do that we have to find.
Wow.
Over $1 billion across the state that cities and municipalities would have to absorb.
They would keep the tax on commercial vehicles. It's eliminating it from personal vehicles.
Tom, can I ask you to do me one favor for this board for Wednesday evening?
Sure.
To the point on the variable expense. Can you get a view of what that number is at the macro department level, DPW meaning a department, police being a department, etc., so that we can understand, again, if we look just at the variable, how much of a pot are we even dealing with to put pressure on?
Okay, and the other thing, besides the salaries, a couple of our biggest increases were on things like debt service, pensions, healthcare. Again, I would not put those in the variable category. So
No, those do not go in a variable category.
yeah, so the more you start looking at this, the more dramatic the cuts would need to be on the variables.
Understood. But I think having those numbers would help us as a board put things in perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and that brings up another point on the Ed, on the capital budget. I mean, we have a lot of projects in the pipeline. Obviously, our debt services is what it is, and it's only going to go one direction. I mean, that's another area where we're going to have to make very difficult decisions there on delaying things, or, I mean, once again, it's good to have and have to have, but that debt service line is obviously one of the largest lines there, so.
And I will also remind you that for the new Norwalk High School, we have a one-time option to get 80% reimbursement. And that building is old, that building is tired, that building was poorly designed, poorly constructed once 50 years ago. And so if we don't take advantage of that now, that $239 million cost, number one, it's going to go up significantly. And number two, it's not going to be an 80% reimbursement. And for the other schools that we have, thanks to Bob Duff, we have a 25-year 60% reimbursement as opposed to what we were getting 23%.
No, yeah, that's all. Well, we got to be very careful there.
Yeah.
But I think the good news is that this is not going to last forever. We have a lot of projects coming online with Wegmans and the buildings and the Y, and those buildings are all coming online, and they are going to help down the road. So yes, this might be a tough thing to do this year, but I think if we can get through the next couple of years, and there's some big projects, obviously the big projects near the curb and everything, those things are going to help the city. I know people have problems with traffic and all that stuff, but I mean, we need these things to drive the city. I mean, the growth of the city, and it's just going to take time. This came out of nowhere, and it's a very difficult thing. And I'm just looking to see whether everyone's going to have to just take a deep breath, and we're going to have to get through this year.
Yep.
COVID knocked the wind out of the commercial side when it comes to office buildings and other kinds of commercial properties.
That's right.
Right. So we're starting to cover a little bit of the same ground. It's important. I don't mean to trivialize it in any way, shape, or form, but I think we're clear on our next steps and actions here, right? We've identified things in the base that we're going to withhold funding on. It's not nearly enough. We're all going to spend some time really thinking about the challenge Troy put out. Tom, you'll get us some additional numbers Wednesday. We will listen carefully during the public comments session and then prepare for some hard and probably lengthy discussions following that. I would recommend first an executive session and then in an open forum. Is that acceptable to everybody as next steps?
Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
Any closing comments from anyone? With that, ladies and gentlemen,
Motion
can I get a
to adjourn.
So moved. So moved, Artie. Thank you all very much. We'll see many of you in person on Wednesday. Remember, 6:30, Common Council Chambers. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ed.
Thank you.